you have the floor.
Thank you, Dana. Good afternoon. I'm glad to be here with the Commissioners, indeed, Reinders and Breton, to present to you the main results of today's college meeting. A main part of our discussion was the regulation for the digital green certificate, and allow me to touch briefly on it. Firstly, what is the function of this certificate? It shows or states whether the person has either been vaccinated or a recent negative test or has recovered from COVID and thus antibodies. Secondly, the certificate will make sure that the results, or what it shows, the data, and there's the minimum set of data, are mutually recognized in every member state. And thirdly, with this digital certificate, we aim to help member states reinstate the freedom of movement in a safe, responsible and trusted manner. We also adopted a communication laying down a common path to a gradual, safe and lasting reopening. It points out what we need to do to get there, including a common framework for response measures and measures covering everything from testing, treatments and vaccine sharing. So these both points are aiming at the reopening, but a precondition for that is vaccination and vaccines. And therefore, I would like to give you an update on where we stand with our vaccination efforts. We are now 2 weeks before the end of the first quarter, since vaccination began in the European Union. And as you all know, as expected, the start was tough. It took time to scale up production of these new vaccines and the new technologies till we had the processes stable, the quality was at the level it was requested. So this was a difficult beginning, but the good news is that we have made progress. It is getting worse. It is worrisome. We see the variants, mainly B117. We see the crest of a third wave forming in member states. And we know that we need to accelerate the vaccination rates. And that brings me to my final point in this introduction, and this is export. Since the European Union has had an export authorization scheme, we now have a clearer picture on the situation. We have this export authorization scheme since the 1st of February, so it's 6 weeks. And since then, in these 6 weeks, we have received hundreds of requests for exports. In numbers, more than 300 requests for export. 314 have been granted, only 1 has been refused. If you put that in numbers of doses, in that time, these 6 last weeks, 41 million doses have been exported to 33 countries. And this shows that Europe is trying to make international cooperation work, whether we do it through the funding of COVAX, we are the largest funder in COVAX, or through exports to other countries. But open roads run in both directions. And this is why we need to ensure that there is reciprocity and proportionality. And I want to be clear on reciprocity. If the situation does not change, we will have to reflect on how to make exports to vaccine-producing countries dependent on their level of openness. So we are exporting a lot to countries that are themselves producing vaccines, and we think this is an invitation to be open, so that we also see exports from those countries coming back to the European Union. And the second point that is of importance for us, we will reflect on whether exports to countries who have higher vaccination rates than us are still proportionate. In other words, we want reliable deliveries of vaccines We want to increase in the contracts. We want to see reciprocity and proportionality in exports. And we are ready to use whatever tool we need to deliver on that. This is about making sure that Europe gets its fair share. We will invest even further in Europe's capacity also beyond this acute phase. We are working with trusted companies to ensure long-term supply, and these are the messages I will take to the leaders at the next European Council.